crave your indulgence and, of course, begging you for your understanding. We were to take the next one, which is on our agenda next, but then because the Lakbo is online and he is expected to have, or he or she, I don't know if it's a he or she was expected to take the next presentation after the lunch break. But because she says she's somewhere where she has network, and if she moves away from there, she may not have any network to talk to us. And for the fact that they've been spending data waiting online, I want to ask that we give her the opportunity to those who cannot provide lunch online, right? So Dolakpo online, you may have the opportunity to talk to us if you're there. Yes, please, Dolakpo.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. Let's have you. If you have good network, I want to see your beautiful face if you can, briefly. But if not, let's listen to the beautiful voice. A round of applause for Dolakpo online.
So I think so once I see breaking something here, so I'm just taking to collect it.
Dolakpo, are you talking to us?
Yes, sir.
Please minimize the noise in your background. If you're listening to a device, you may put it off. If you're a laptop, mute, if there are people around you that are listening from a device, please, they may just put up their microphone on the device, please. Those around you should mute any microphone. If it's a laptop, just take the volume to 0. Please, maybe we should give you time to sort all of those out, please. Please, Dolakbo, take your time to organize yourself.
Hello?
Are you set for us?
Hello?
Are you set for us, please?
Yes, sir.
Please, let's have you 15 minutes to talk to us. There is still background noise in your ends. Please minimize that and talk to us. 15 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. I am Oniel Dolapo, and I'll be a PhD scholar, and I'll be speaking on hybrid predictive modeling on the effect of IPTp among other interventions for malaria in pregnancy in Nigeria sub-regions. So this is just the outline. The next slide, outline of what I'll be talking about. We have the background, the aim and objectives, the methodology, the results, discussion, and then acknowledgement references. By infect female Anopheles mosquito. And malaria in pregnancy is also a major concern because pregnant women are among the two major vulnerable population. That's the pregnant women and then children under 5 years of age. In sub-Saharan Africa, IPTP-SP has been the preventive measure given for ITN, as we have been told today, and IPTP also to help in this. However, pregnant women remain an high-risk population, having only about 31% of women within the taking this dose, taking at least 3 or more of the required dose, and then about just 50% comply with under insecticide treated nets. So therefore, although there are previous studies that have looked at IPTP dosage usage, and it has been seen that it is best to take at least 3 doses, and these will help in preventing placenta malaria, maternal anemia, low birth weight, etc. So the research questions. Thank you. And the third research question is, what are the major drivers of projected MIP incidence in selected high bundle states in Nigerian subregions? That's slide 5, around slide 5. Then the research objectives are: 1, we'll analyze the transmission dynamics of malaria in pregnancy to assess the effectiveness of IPTP administration on reducing MIP. We assess the various levels of IPTP compliance influence on the incidence of malaria in pregnancy, and then we try to enhance the transparency of malaria in pregnancy risk prediction for identifying major drivers of malaria in pregnancy incidence. Slide 6. So the area or scope of the work, it's a huge task to cover the 6 sub-regions of Nigeria. So we picked 6 states from each of the sub-regions that are seen to have the highest prevalence based on the MIS 2021 reports. So we picked Kebbi State for Northwest, Niger for North Central, Yobe for Northeast, Ondo for Southwest, Cross River for South-South, and Enugu for Southeast. Slide 7. So the data we used the malaria confirmed pregnant women cases obtained from the NMDR, and we also got IPTP coverage data from DHS, and then at some point we had to bring in the socioeconomic indicators such as wealth index, urbanization, electricity access, maternal education level, which was obtained from the MIS, Malaria Indicator Survey. And we also brought in climatic factors such as temperature, specifically temperature 2 meters, relative humidity, and then the total precipitation, which represents rainfall. So the method used, we actually had to do some pre-analysis on the data. We tried to see the nature of the data. We carried out to see the variance in the data, to check if there are outliers, to check if there are missing values, and to make sure that the data is in a good state to give us the right insights. And then we also integrate all the data that we got from varying, like from different databases, like I've mentioned earlier. We brought them into one data set where we can now proceed with our analysis. So to respond to objective 1, and in the mechanistic model, we looked at the 3rd trimester of malaria for malaria in pregnancy, because malaria in pregnancy, we have 3 trimesters, and IPTP is recommended to be taken from the 2nd trimester and 3rd trimester. But seeing that our expected goal is that at least pregnant women should have taken three doses before the end of their pregnancy. So at the third trimester, I want to see that, okay, the data we have at the third trimester, when at least 3 doses must have been taken, what is the what's the dynamics of malaria in pregnancy at that stage? So from the model we have here, IPTP is administered to susceptible pregnant women that are already in the susceptible population, and depending on how the data, the efficacy of the data over time, they can either proceed to expose class, they can proceed to expose class or remain protected. They proceed to expose class actually. Then those that don't take the IPTP, they don't go to the through the IPTP class route. They move from susceptible straight to exposed class. Then over time, depending on um, how the bites are successful bites that becomes infectious, the pregnant women can become infectious, asymptomatic or symptomatic infectious, having symptoms or not showing symptoms. And then over time, they could recover based on treatment and move back to susceptible class, or they go out of the pregnancy phase. Okay, so then we have the mosquito population down there, the susceptible population, exposed and infectious mosquitoes. The interactions brings about the transmission dynamics of malaria in pregnancy. So the model has its own assumptions, and the scope within which we built it, like I've stated already. So temporal clearance of gametocyte is only due to treatment, and the efficacy of drug is same regardless of the number of doses. So, but we are looking at least 3 doses at this level, and there's no disease-induced death for the asymptomatic population. These are some of the parameters used in the model. So, to respond to the second objective, the method used, we looked at the next generation method to derive the effective reproductive number, to quantify the average number of secondary case infections that can be generated by a single infected pregnant woman under current IPTP coverage. And then to respond to the third objective, we brought in the hybrid machine learning integration into the system to be able to check risks, to be able to carry out risk prediction, the risk rate at which pregnant women can become infectious. So how we achieved this was we extracted cause of infection from our malaria and transmission dynamics model. We extracted the cause of infection factor, which we now integrated with other features, that is our socio-economic features and our climatic features. In the climatic features, we worked with 2 months lag rainfall, because usually after 2 months that the effect of the rainfall actually could reflect on transmission. So then the socio-economic factors, urbanicity, as I've mentioned before, and all that. Okay, so the machine learning model used was random forest and XGBoost algorithm. Next slide. So in the results for objective 1, here we have on slide 12. Yeah, we have on the next slide. We have on this next slide the observed data and the confirmed malaria in pregnancy. This is the raw data just displayed in time series to be able to understand what goes on in different states. And looking at it at the first view, you can see that the pattern in different states are different. Invariably, different regions have different response and different incidents going on, having different peak times. Moving on to the next slide. Here, we looked at the dominant periodicities of peak malaria incidence periods in these different states. And You can see that the peak periods for several years were at different points in times because of the varying geographical differences. So after carrying out the calibration and fitting of the model to, to the data, on the next slide, we were able to come out with a model that could capture the pattern of malaria incidents over time in this state between 2015 to 2020, where the malaria and pregnancy data available stopped. And so we use this as a benchmark to carry out to study the effects of it so far and the prediction. Now the model was built based on the 95% confidence interval. That at least with 95% confidence, this model is able to capture the pattern observed in those states based on available data. Yeah, so we observed that well, our model, with the help of bootstrap, we're able to capture, but there are some times where the model could have underestimated extreme surges, which were observed in states like Yobe and Niger, and so, but generally, the model was able to capture. And what we observe is that different states have different power, and therefore the interventions to be given, the approach to handling malaria and pregnancy in these different states um, needs to be modified, not like the same for every state. Now, to answer the second objective, we looked at the epidemiological effects and reproductive number in those states, and we observed that Niger and Cross River states, malaria never truly stopped spreading, even in dry seasons. And so the mosquito bites, the mosquito biting rates exhibited a strong positive correlation with the reproductive number in all the states, with the highest sensitivity observed in Yobe State. Moving to the next slide, we can see that uh, when we make a scenario where we have no IPTp scenario and then the baseline scenario of the current coverage of malaria in these states, you see that the coverage level of which malaria and pregnancy has been taken for different states vary. And so even a little drop in some certain states can cause a serious spike in the um, increase in malaria and pregnancy. Like in Niger State, you can see that if there's any drop, the 20% drop of what of the from the current coverage level, from the current baseline level, which is 0.37%, um, it could cause as about plus 119 cases, and for Yobe State, it cause about plus 669 cases. So moving to the next slide, I also look at the effect it will have on malaria and pregnancy. That the current coverage is so low, so there shouldn't even be a drop in the coverage. Rather, there should be increase. And this is just to show what was explained in the previous tables. Next slide, going on to answering the third question. We can see that when we brought in the hybrid, next slide, please. The next slide, please. When we brought in the machine learning integration, we observed that in Yobe and Niger states, the cases are Yobe and Niger state cases, a strong positive association was observed with environmental factors such as humidity and the force of infection, which was derived from the mechanistic model, showing that the biological factors influencing malaria transmission in those states, humidity also uh, brings about increase in the spike. While in the southern states, such as Enugu State, there is a negative correlation between malaria, between rainfall and malaria clinical cases. So, while in Ondo State, there's a strong relationship So you can see that the factors affecting a state and resulting in increase in malaria incidence is not the same factor affecting result in increase in malaria incidence in like the northern states. So every state has its own peculiarity. In the in some of the states is the wealth score and the urbanization that showed a constant inverse relationship with the malaria clinical cases. So moving on to the next slide, we're able to stratify the risk and distinct them between um, how these factors influence the force of infection or the rate at which malaria increases in different stage. You can see that in Niger State, the risk of malaria as it's increasing, where we have as it's increasing, the mean force of infection is also having a match in relationship as they increase. While in Kebbi and Yobe State, the biological risk is extreme and constant. And in Enugu State, the biological risk is high and doesn't track perfectly with the clinical cases. So moving on to the next slide, this slide just shows a pictorial view of the relationship and of the various factors on malaria incidence. And the next slide shows that after we developed the model, we tried to validate the model. So 20% was used for training the model, while 20% was used to test and validate the model to see its um, its goodness of fit, its goodness of predicting the malaria risk problem. So in Cross River State, random forest outperformed the XGBoost model, but for every other state, you can see that the hybrid model combining XGBoost, random forest with the force of infection factor present performed better. Next slide. We now went ahead to carry out prediction. So in our prediction, you can see that the model was able to a large extent, follow the existing pattern over time as observed from the malaria incidence. So in discussing on the results we have, we can see that there's a need for, the next slide please, we can see that there's a need for regional stratification of intervention in addressing malaria in pregnancy, especially what strategies can we use to ensure that compliance to IPTp dosage, at least 3 dosage, is maximized so that we can have reduced cases of malaria in pregnancy. So in the northern states, there's this tendency for explosive over that the IPTP protective shield. When we looked at the baseline coverage now, and then what if there's no coverage or there's a 20% drop in IPTP coverage, and discovered that IPTP is critical life-saving intervention. It's averted approximately 1,642 cases in Yobe and 930 in Kebbi. So representing a 0.75 reduction in total potential burden despite intense seasonal pressure. Then also we observed that bringing in the biological aspect, which is the force of infection, into our model to predict the malaria risk factor, we discovered that Niger State are tightly coupled with climate, which acts as a primary trigger for mosquito outbreaks. While in the southern state, high clinical volumes does not always track with the transmission intensity in the community. Okay, moving on to the next slide. We can also see that um, the sensitivity analysis shows the current framework is highly sensitive to drug supply chains. And so even a 20% decline in drug uptake can trigger massive outbreaks in high-burden northern regions. We also see the role of socioeconomic shield in different regions, the urban vulnerability in different regions, the predictive stability, and some of the major drivers like transmission is driven by humidity in the north, whereas socioeconomic factors seem to have more influence in some of the southern regions. In conclusion, there's a need to prioritize intervention for the northeast and the northwest, which generally showed more higher cases. Transmission is quite explosive there. So in a bid to achieve the NMEP goal, targeted control efforts must be put in place, and training at primary health facilities should be encouraged so that pregnant women can be well enlightened, as well as the health personnel there can keep data and records of malaria in pregnancy, because the current data of malaria in pregnancy seem to have died out since after COVID-19, 2020, 2021. We don't really have much consistent record. We don't even have records as such on malaria in pregnancy like before now. Also, we need to prioritize ANC intensification in the northern states with pre-peak mobilization windows, trying to understand the peak seasons and then intensify and encourage women to come for their dosage, so that before the peak period, at least a good number of coverage would have been put in place. And then we need to integrate NMEP surveillance with state-calibrated mechanistic models to monitor IPTp efficacy and to also trigger proactive resource shifts. Some of the limitations of this work, next slide. Some of the limitations of this work, like I mentioned, is reporting gaps. Next slide, please. And the model used, the mechanistic model, might have some constraint in underestimating some extreme surges, but generally was able to capture the pattern. And then lastly, a limitation in our work was that although we brought in the force of infection into the integrated model, we cannot just determine force of infection based on just routine cases. So we are still trying to see how we can get serological data to improve on our findings and make our work more robust. Future studies on, we try to look at how we can downscale our hybrid framework to not just the state level, but also local government area levels. And then to be able to integrate serological data in our study. Then we also want to look at cost effectiveness analysis and how mortality rates in malaria and pregnancy can also be checked. So I want to acknowledge the support of various teams, partners, and everyone that made this work a success. I want to appreciate my supervisors. I want to appreciate the CAMDAO team. I want to appreciate MC. I want to appreciate NMEP. I want to appreciate our sponsors, Bill and Melinda Gates, and everyone that has made this work, made us to have access to data and be able to carry out this research. These are some of my references. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you, Dolakbo. At a point, I was saying that mathematics is leaving women behind. So this is actually a proof that mathematics is not leaving women behind. A round of applause for Dolakbo again. because she's online and she's struggling with internet, I know we may have a lot of comments, observations. I want to beg that we make some of those input directly to, um, is it prof or somebody, in case, yes, supervisor, so that she can actually have them. You can written down in piece of papers and we take them. But we would give just 2%, because one, been told that the kitchen, the restaurant is saying that our lunch time is expected to end 3:30 because there's another lunch and come